Hello and welcome to the interview here on France 24. My guest today is the United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Ban Ki-moon. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for this opportunity. Great to see you.
Those are your last weeks as Secretary General. I'm going to begin with the election in the United States. Donald Trump, he said many things about his willingness to put America first. Are you worried that Donald Trump will go back on several of the key international agreements, the climate agreement, of course, but also, for instance, the Iran nuclear deal?
I heard all what he said during his campaign, the process. Now that he is elected, I was encouraged by what he said during his acceptance speech. I had an opportunity of speaking over the phone. I had a very good telephone talks over many issues, including climate change. We agreed to meet each other, but I hope that I'll be able to meet and discuss all the matters of common concern. The issues which United Nations has been dealing with are the issues of common humanity, particularly on climate change. I heard what he said during his campaign. This climate change agreement done in Paris December last year was the culmination of a strong commitment of 193 member states, and including parties. Altogether, 193 parties have signed, and more than 110 countries ratified now.
So there's no way back?
No way back. This is unstoppable. I've been saying that this has been an issue where a lot of controversies and some even skeptics were raising their voices. Now that
including him?
Yes, including him. But as a very successful global business leader, now he's going to be a global political leader. Then he has to listen to the voices of the people.
So you're ending your tenure pretty soon. Probably the climate deal is your biggest achievement. What is your biggest failure? Syria?
Well, Syria may be one of the crises which I will deeply regret that we have not been able to see the end of this. But I think this is a common failure for international community. One of the big disappointments as a Secretary General during the last 10 years, which I have experienced, is egoism, very narrow national, personal perspectives and interests, where the leaders of certain countries have been focusing. Now, all this...
You've been disappointed by world leaders. I mean, you can maybe speak more of it now.
The Syria is one of the big examples and where we have not been able to achieve. There are many other areas still in South Sudan and Yemen and the Central African Republic and Burundi. And they are all fighting, and they are not listening to the voices of the people, and they are just focusing on their very narrow perspectives.
But speaking of the obstruction on Syria, for instance, there's been a lot of commentary about the fact that one of the permanent members of the Security Council, namely Russia, has been blocking the issue. Hasn't this really been your main obstacle in trying to solve that crisis?
There are three areas we have seen divisions, not only in the Security Council. Then the Syrian people are divided largely into two groups. They are fighting among themselves. And regional powers in the Middle East, they are completely divided. And then three divisions in Syria, Middle East, and Security Council, that has provided a perfect storm where we were not able to deliver. Despite such circumstances, United Nations has been doing all what we could to deliver life-saving humanitarian assistance to people. Look at what is happening in Aleppo. This
well, we see bombings,
yes,
essentially.
Bombing is continuing, and United Nations humanitarian convoys could not have been able to deliver because of direct security and threat. But I sincerely hope that parties will immediately begin political negotiation.
But do you really believe still? So I mean, didn't you feel during all this time that you wanted to bang your fist on the table and tell everyone around the table, enough is enough?
I have been doing my best. I have been continuously discussing with the P5s, collectively, individually, and I have been talking with the regional powers. My special envoy, de Mistura, has been running...
Mission Impossible.
Yes, my goal is to change Mission Impossible, Mission Possible.
Do you still believe
If there is a political will, this can be done.
You don't think it's an unending war?
I'm emphasizing that there is no military solution. There is only a political solution which can have a sustainable solution of this issue.
Speaking of the pressure the United Nations endures, there was this episode with Saudi Arabia. There was a report on the killing of children in Yemen, and Saudi Arabia was mentioned in a report. Saudi Arabia, you said, pressured the UN to take Saudi Arabia off the list. You said that pressure was unacceptable, and now there's a review that's still pending. For you, was this really a moment where you felt member states are putting too much pressure on the UN and the UN is not able to answer?
There have been certain cases, not to mention Saudi Arabia, some countries who have been bringing their own national perspectives. When national perspectives are too strongly stated, that can work and that can be seen as a political pressure. But I have been firm to upholding the ground rule as well as the principles of
But you withdrew Saudi Arabia from that list?
No, it's a temporary provisional decision because as a chief administrative officer of the United Nations, I had also think about the overall operation of the United Nations. While it is a very seriously important one, at the same time, I have to save many human lives. Otherwise, they would be just dying without any immediate help. So there are many such moments when we have to first rescue, first save human lives. Then we have to seek for justice and accountability. This is what I have been doing. This is a sort of a practical and realistic approaches. You cannot just let people die because of this report. Then that's why I have been meeting the Crown Prince and Deputy Crown Prince and foreign ministers, and they committed themselves in writing that they will change their operations. And
really, and has that happened?
Using all diplomatic efforts myself and using my special envoy, Sheikh Ahmed, and also other key countries who can have influence on both parties. I just briefly met the Secretary Kerry a few days ago in Marrakesh, and he was in Oman, and he was meeting with all these Houthis and Yemeni parties. And my special envoy is on the ground all the times, talking to both sides. I've been talking to them that there is no military solution. Why don't you continue this once we had the meeting in Kuwait, so have a sustainable political solution?
I want to get to another issue that's been dodging you and maybe your legacy, Haiti, the cholera outbreak back in 2010 after the earthquake, after years of saying that there was no evidence that UN Blue Helmets brought cholera to the island. It was eventually acknowledged a few months ago. You expressed deep regrets, but you have not formally apologized. Will you do that before you leave?
On December 1st, I'm going to report to the General Assembly based on our preparations. And I was in Haiti last month, and I met many people, and including government leaders, and I expressed my, again, deep regret for what the United Nations has not been able to deliver as much as needed.
But you haven't answered my question. Do you plan to formally apologize to the people of Haiti on behalf of the United Nations?
We will continue to provide the necessary assistance, and we will see how we can really address this issue. I have already expressed my moral responsibility and expressed a deep regret for what we have not been able to do as much as needed. You know. Yeah.
Just last question on the Democratic Republic of the Congo. How concerned are you about the situation there? We've seen violence, we've seen lots of tensions over the end of the regime of Joseph Kabila.
I have taken note of the appointment of new Prime Minister, and there was, I welcome the political agreement which was adopted on October 18th. And when I met him in person in Kinshasa, I have conveyed all what I have been observing and what I have been thinking, the way to resolve all this issue. First of all, I think this October 18th agreement will be fully implemented, and President Kabila should engage in a wider and broader political dialogue, inclusive way. I met the opposition political leaders, ruling party leaders, and including himself. I'm continuing to urge them to resolve everything peacefully.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. Good luck for your future. Thank you very much for watching this edition of the interview here on France 24.